Welcome to Microsoft SaaS Stories. I'm your host, Jason Young, a curious engineering manager here at Microsoft. And in this episode with Preezie, we'll hear how they saw an opportunity to reimagine the retail experience, building transformative services with generative AI on the Microsoft Cloud. Today, I'm here with Michael Tutek, co-founder and CEO of Preezie, and Quoc Ngyen, co-founder and CFO of Preezie. How's it going, guys?
Great, thanks, Jason. How about
Right, thanks,
yourself?
Jason.
Very good, very good. I'm very excited to talk to you. I've been on LinkedIn checking out all the videos that you've been publishing. I really like that you're out there on a regular basis, like showing how you're integrating with things and showing some deployments out there. So that was pretty exciting for me checking that out.
Yeah, thanks. It's a little outside the comfort zone to get on all those videos and get on the camera, but I feel like it's the new thing to do.
Yeah, it's funny. My manager, she was just talking the other day. She's like, "Oh, I've been getting sucked into LinkedIn Reels," which I think she was just talking about LinkedIn videos, and I can see why now because it's the business side of things, but it's exciting and relevant. So that was pretty neat. But let's jump into it because I'm sure people are interested in hearing about the company, about the product, about all of the decisions that you made along the way, and all the journeys and adventures. So let's just start, from the basics. So tell me about your company, and then also I know that you pivoted rather recently. So how did you pivot, quickly in this era of AI?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So we've been around for about 4 or 5 years, and we've always worked with retail, in particular e-commerce, all the way from the little Shopify store all the way to Dell, Guitar Center, Purple mattresses, and we just didn't want to be left in the back. So we knew we needed to build something new. Historically, we were e-commerce quizzes, so it's all about bringing in-store shopping online through a quiz that helps you select. And we just
Hmm.
didn't want to be blockbuster. So we thought, hey, what's the new version of customer experience look like now that AI, in particular Gen AI, is out in the market? So we sat down with the team. That's actually when we got involved with the guys in Microsoft. We did we went to the Retail Innovation Hub, saw everything, and we came up with this idea to build an AI shopping assistant, totally from the ground up, 100% AI, all the way from back end to data to logic to front end experiences. So that's what we're focusing on now. So effectively building a AI shopping assistant.
Hmm. I love that you started from what does this process look like in kind of a perfect world? Like, let's just re-envision this whole thing. And then you use that to figure out, and versus just saying like, I have this technology, let's figure out how to use it. I mean, I know that that was like in the back of your mind, but you actually started from like, hey, what is this going to look like, and what problem can we ultimately solve?
Yeah, definitely. I
So very
think
cool.
yeah, I mean, we've always believed in if you compare in-store shopping versus
Hmm.
online shopping, like there's a big gap between the two.
Hmm.
In-store has physical people. You can ask them questions. They can tell you about shipping policies on the spot. They can recommend the right size on the spot. Where online, even with our quizzes, it helps, but it's nowhere near.
Hmm.
So I guess the idea is when the goal is so far-fetched, even with new AI, you still can't even really reach it. So
Yeah.
it's so far ahead that you're still on the path. Therefore,
Mhm.
you're building something that will be valuable.
Yeah.
I think as well, like Michael and I we've always known that AI is the future. So going back even 2 or 3 years, we knew we had to. I think part of it was the technology wasn't. We always had the same vision, bring the in-store shopping experience online and help consumers effectively shop in a better way. And I think some of the technologies just wasn't available for application wise, 2 3 years ago, and it's probably about a year ago that we really sort of got in the trenches and thought, you know what, we need to do, we need to build something that
Yeah.
is next gen.
Hmm. Very cool. And then, what first motivated you to consider a SaaS model? I mean, it sounds like a kind of an obvious answer, right? I think you were working with SaaS companies, so you basically needed a SaaS model. Is that right?
Quoc, did you want to take that one? Are you talking about, Jason, about the AI or the traditional business?
Just whenever you pivoted, basically the new products that you have, like from the start, my understanding is it's a SaaS model and you're selling to other SaaS companies. So I think the answer is probably kind of obvious. So if it's obvious, you can say that, but you were selling to SaaS companies a SaaS product. What made you think about a SaaS model?
Our customers are the retailers. So, the ideal customers is the Best Buys and whatnot of the world. And I think what you're saying is, the SaaS model has always been the traditional sort of software, services type model. What we are doing, we're evolving as a business. With the new product, the Gen AI, AI shopping assistant product that we're building, isn't going to be the traditional SaaS type of model. There's various thoughts that we have to put in inputs in terms of, token usage. There's some usage database and all those types of layer and infrastructure needs to be considered. So and we're still, to be frank, we're still in sort of working out what that pricing model looks like. But we do know as a business that we need to evolve, and it's not going to be a traditional sort of monthly subscription SaaS type of model. So it's a work in progress, but the model will change.
So it's a SaaS deployment model. So from their perspective, they're able to purchase the software. But what you're saying is that the pricing model is a bit unconventional compared to other SaaS applications.
Pretty much right. Yep.
Yeah.
One thing, Jason, I think I'd throw in there is part of the reason I think we have to do this, and I think lots of startups will, is because we all know traditional SaaS models, I'll call them traditional SaaS models, are like 80, 90% margin. So that means that, if you're paying, say, all your production costs, say $1, you can charge at, basically 10. So effectively, what I think even OpenAI and a lot of AI companies have done now is they've ridiculously increased the expectation of value for dollar. So like what I could get before for $1, like I expect kind of the same thing, or if not more now, for like half the price. So you think about it, if you go back to before November 2022, before ChatGPT, and let's go, you just had a software that could do things like that, what would you expect to pay? It's not 20 US a month. Like whatever it is, it's probably like 2, 3, 4,000. So effectively what it means is I think you have to reduce the margin. And when you reduce the margin, then, you have to forego, you can't take the risk because your margin's not 90%. So when your margin is 90%, you can take the risk of, that customer uses more, that customer uses less, I balance out. But when you make less margin, you can't take that risk. So therefore, a traditional SaaS won't work. So you need something else, like a usage-based or a value-based, but something where your costs are more in line with how you charge.
That's really interesting. We've seen that change in other areas, right? Like box software to, app stores. And so it sounds like we're seeing a similar transformation there. That's really interesting. And then, continuing to talk about that piece of it, like how did you end up utilizing the Microsoft tech stack for this?
So we've always been pretty aligned with Microsoft. For context, I don't know what it was called, but years ago we got into the Microsoft, I think it's called BizSpark or Microsoft for Startups, but it was like 200 grand worth of credits and all this stuff, which made a big deal for us when we were first starting. And we didn't pay for Microsoft for like 2 years. So it was really valuable. So we've always been loyal. And then the Microsoft team was really excited about what we're doing. I think they saw it like this. I don't think a lot of startups or a lot of businesses are really jumping into OpenAI and all the Gen AI. I think it's scary. Bastardizes your current model. I don't really know how it integrates. So we were the opposite. We were just like, hey, how do we do this? So they took us to the Retail Innovation Hub and then just showed us everything. And then what we did is when we started to build it out, we did a little POC. We looked at other models, like we looked at the Claudes and even the Geminis, but it's pretty clear that OpenAI was the best. And then obviously we moved it to Azure. So we ran OpenAI through Azure, because then you've got your additional safety features, your additional filters there. So it all just made sense, to be honest, and it works really well.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. And then what were the biggest challenges along the way? And do you think that most of them were business? Were they technical? Was it a mix of both?
Yeah. So I'll kick off with just technical and conceptual, and then I'll hand it over to Quoc for more like business, commercial, strategic, because there's that part of it. From a technical standpoint, like nothing had been done before. So when we went and did this, we couldn't find any examples of anything like it. And we're talking we're talking in the dark, deep corners of the web where someone has written a blog about some hack they did in a weekend, and we couldn't find anything anywhere. So we really struggled. So everything had to be a POC. So we spent the first 4 months just building out dozens of POCs. Can we transform traditional data into this format? Can it do this? Can it do that? So we just solve the technical problems by just POC, just getting in there and just building it all. And then from there, I think, where we're at now is it's out in the market, and now we're just trying to get retailers to jump on board so we can learn what it's like to scale it. So from a technical standpoint, I would say there are dozens of hurdles, but there was no way to do it aside from just to literally just do it. You do it in the easy way as a POC. You don't build all the peripherals and all the dependencies, but you just get the job done to prove can this application work. So from a technical standpoint there, I think from a commercial and strategic standpoint, we've got a business with revenue. So I'll kind of let Quoc talk about that part.
Yeah, I mean, look, as Michael said, we've got an existing product that isn't built around AI. What I do know, so I lead. My background is in corporate finance, M&A. So I lead all our funding rounds. We're the traditional type of startup that's done angel round, seed stage, and whatnot. And there's an element where our investors and prospect investors that we talk to, they're always asking, particularly in this day and age, what AI are you incorporating into your business, your product? And that's the whole catalyst of the drive of change. And let's just call it the pivot of our business. And I tasked Michael and the product team with going out with, collaborating with Microsoft to build this. And I think this is the part where, as Michael alluded, we don't want to be the blockbuster that's been there, getting good market share and then basically being phased out with new technology. We want to be innovative, so we want to be at the forefront of that, and that's the our thinking from the founder level all the way down through our business.
Yeah, absolutely. At least you didn't have any technical debt then. I mean, building something completely from scratch. I'm sure.
Yep.
I'm sure that helped. But like you said, you were just paving completely new paths. So during that process, I mean, now that you've gone through that, you made all the POCs. Now you're in production. Is there anything that you wish you had done differently? You could go back and tell yourself something. What would it be?
That's a good question. I think from my standpoint, it would probably be to just jump in earlier. It's that whole hindsight. When you can't see, kind of the forest from the trees type thing. You're in the weeds. Everything feels like it's too big, But I think this whole mentality where it's almost like just bite off more than you can chew, and then chew like hell. Makes sense. So everything is worked out. Surprisingly, everything's worked out. The commercials looking okay. Technically, it looks okay. Still got scalability issues that we still solve, and we can cover those. But I would just say, hey, Michael, Quoc, co-founders, 2 years, into the past, just do it now and just jump straight in. 100%. Don't go slow. Just do it. It's going to have to be done, so just do it as fast as you can. But having said that, what we are doing now was physically possible but it was not feasible before 4.0 mini came out. So like I'll caveat that. And that was part of the reason why it just was not like, even now you can go online and some of the biggest companies in the world are building some really cool AI chatbots, but they are nowhere near to the quality, because when you're using 4.0, you have to make it very, very, like the instructions have to be very basic because it's very expensive. But then you convert to 4.0 mini and you can put in 2,000, tokens for an instruction. It's still affordable. So having said that, I would have told myself to do it, but then I would have said you're going to have to wait until like a 4.0 mini equivalent is out, because retailers won't pay that much. It's just not feasible.
Yeah, it's where your plan and the technology sort of met in the middle. Love that. Go ahead, Quoc.
Yep.
That's what I was about to add on, Jason. We as a business and working with Michael and team, it's like, let's build what is a really good product. Obviously mindful of costs, but costs continue to reduce in terms of token costs and open AI and whatnot. And this is the part where, let's try and build the Lamborghini, because the price of the Lamborghini hopefully should reduce in time. And that's what's happened. That's what's occurred, and it'll continue to occur. But the being able to build a product that is able to take in different models and outputs is certainly something that we've been mindful of building from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, on that, something super interesting is we met with some really, really experienced AI people probably about a year ago. Like these are really, really experienced guys, and they were all on the same view that, hey, if you build hypothetically something now, say 4.0 mini's out, if you build for that pricing model, then what will happen is, like, as soon as a new pricing model is out, like most of your stuff is redundant. And they basically said you need to build for capability and just have faith in the tech gods that the pricing will come down, because it will. So that's actually what we did. So for the first 6-7 months of our dev, like the whole team, we were just building. And I was actually saying to Quoc, hey, I'm getting some pretty major anxiety because nothing is coming out that's cheap enough. And then all of a sudden 4.0 mini just landed, and it was like, oh my God, like it was exactly like everyone anticipated. So it was pretty surreal, to be honest. But you have to think, like, I feel like for us, if we didn't, we would have been rebuilding, or what we built literally would have been redundant as soon as the model came out.
Yeah, this really reminds me of the software industry when everybody's applications were using more memory, more storage, but they were counting on the fact that computers just kept getting, like, I don't want to say exponentially, but they were getting so much, more memory, more storage, more speed, that if you're spending 2 years like building a game, that like new PCs are going to be just crazy powerful. Thankfully,
Yeah.
like that, there less of that is going on that side of things, but those were crazy times when people were building with the highest end machines and just counting on that to happen. And yeah, we're seeing with AI, I think we're going to continue to see it. Like, it seems to be a pretty stable bet that either the same thing is going to be less expensive, or there's going to be additional capabilities if you're for that same price tier.
Yeah, you could just do more. I was saying to the team, our software is remarkably good, but it would almost be as good as a real person if we had like an equivalent to like a 5.0 mini. Like it would be like a smarter than 4.0, but at the same price as 4.0 mini. Then I think from a retail standpoint, like you're never capped, but you'd almost be like, hey, your imagination is limited now, not the technology. Where right now it's technology is limited, not imagination. And then eventually that will flip, where the tech is so good that you'll go like it's actually imagination or real world application that's limited, not the tech.
Yeah, I never thought about the fact that it's going to, the intelligence of the model, or not even the intelligence, because that's not the right word, but the sophistication of the model, like being able to apply that to things that were maybe previously mundane. Like, that's really amazing that you're going to get like somebody who, a model that can, score like perfect on the SATs, and they're helping you like shop.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like that's something that just
Yeah.
didn't happen in human history. Like you could just never do that. Einstein couldn't help you pick out the right pair of shoes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. We laugh
Yeah.
about this often because often, we'll talk to Microsoft or other people and they're like, hey, do you need better models? It's like, yes, okay. It's actually not like, better models helps. It's more like the models for us need to get better at remembering context through a large
Mhm.
like piece of data. So it's more
Yeah.
like this. When it comes to recommending something, they land it. They're very, very good.
Mhm.
But when you're like, hey, um, 35 messages ago, I mentioned I was coming for a suit jacket and pants.
Mhm.
You forget that you're actually looking at a suit jacket and pants because you're talking about the pants. So there's specific things. But the point I was initially saying is like we're laughing like this model can like kind of give you instructions about how to do like open heart surgery and zero gravity, and
Right.
I just need to recommend like a black toaster with a black kettle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's really
But
amazing.
but
This isn't the future that I imagined, but I'll take it.
that's right.
Cool. So, as we're going through this mind shift and understanding this new world, like you have engineers that have to start thinking in this way as well. They have to start knowing how to create instructions for the generative AI and to develop applications that frankly are just developed in a completely different way than they've been developed in the past. So, how did you get your engineers to really be thinking that way and be efficient in that new world?
That's a good question. So I think first thing I'll say is like they all had complete buy-in from the founders and our head of tech.
Mhm.
Um, and on top of that, Quoc and I were completely bought in, which means that like we're not asking for silly things to be done. For example, hey, I need to do this POC. That should take a day. Well, it would take a day, but I need to spend 3 days to research how this stuff works. Then it will take a day. And
Mhm.
then Quoc and I and our head of tech, Danny, just goes, yep, fair enough. So I think it's first just an understanding, and then I think second is our head of tech and myself, we got really deep into it. So like I'm not a developer, but from the prompting side, like me and Danny, we did all the architecture. And at this point, prompt or the prompt engineering side of it is actually more product than dev. So initially the developers were owning all the prompts, but we've actually moved it out of dev to product. So
Mhm.
the way you see it is devs actually have a lot less code to do because about 50-60% of the functionality is in prompting. So it's
Mhm.
just an understanding that the world is just different. Product teams and prompt engineering is going to become bigger. Dev will become smaller, but it just means you could probably do more. So I think understanding, letting them learn, letting them build, like it took some of our guys like a couple months just to kind of really get
Yeah.
the handle on like how does this work? Like I'm not even, oh, that's not in code. There's a bug there. That's got nothing to do with code. It's just the output of the prompt wasn't a valid JSON or something. You're like, that's
Right.
just odd. Like it's just not code. So you just
Mhm.
got to be understanding and then just let people just do their thing.
Yeah, I've seen where, developers in this new world, like the experience that I've seen is they can go from like zero to like really doing something amazing in like 15 minutes. And then, they're like 80% of the way there. And it's that last 20% then where it's like, okay, this is a lot more complicated to handle those edge cases like you mentioned, like not valid JSON, or how do I get the maximum performance out of this? How do I make this thing do intelligent things? So that's
Yeah.
that's what I've seen as well. Um,
Yeah.
and then how do you do all of this then? I know you mentioned, I think you mentioned security earlier, but like, how do you do this in a scalable and secure way then? How do you get this out at that scale?
Yeah, so I think we are still early in the piece.
Mhm.
So we know we're not at like thousands of customers. We're at the handful of first. We focus purely on capability,
Mhm.
and proving value to the retailer. So in terms of scale, there's a few things. One is like you build your administration console, your content management system as you would. Um, but you can use the AI to help you. So for example, if you're looking at analytics, instead of building out like 20 different analytical reports, you could just get the data and then just ask the AI to build you whatever reports you want. Like there are different things like this. And also I think it's just allowing, like, I think what we're seeing is you're going to have like different, I guess, prompts, and also maybe even allow the retailers or the customers to control their prompts. So for example, we've got about 60 or so prompts, and we're talking like a couple 100,000 tokens of prompts, and that's just for like one instance. So I think part of it is, hey, like that might be the retail prompt infrastructure, but for electronics, it's just going to have to look different. But the cool thing is, I actually did a POC last week of getting an AI to adapt like fashion prompts into electrical prompts, and it did a really good job.
So from a sort of strategic business perspective as well, Jason, what we're kind of, because we can't boil the ocean, right? We're not a huge business. What we have focused on is a certain like a Shopify and fashion business, because we want to prove out what we're doing adds value to the retailer. They're getting higher conversions, they're getting increase in average order value, they're getting a much better customer experience, etc., etc. So we're still proving out those proof points, and we've got to focus on a certain segment or vertical. That's what we're doing, and the issue is we're tackling now is how do we scale that to electronics retailers, furniture, etc., etc. Because as Michael alluded, the prompting and the engineering around that is different, in terms of those sorts of verticals. So that's the challenge that we're going through. From we know it works for fashion, we know it works really well, but how can we apply that and make that so that you're selling multiple products in multiple industries, and our tool and product works. And the other thing about scalability as well is that we're going through, and this is the part where we've got to be able to make it affordable from a back-end infrastructure perspective. And from a finance and behind the scenes, I'm working with Michael, the product team, a head of tech, to be able to go, okay, cool, this is really great, but we're using too many tokens, or the database cost is too expensive high, and we're going through at the same time as making it scalable, making the infrastructure costs as affordable as possible, so that we can release a pricing model that is that's quite reasonable, affordable in the market. So we're still going through those challenges at the moment.
Yeah, it sounds like you're also really relying on the, since it's the generative model, actually is executing on Azure OpenAI. I mean, you're counting on that compute. So in a way, like a big portion of like the actual like heavy lifting then is handled by the underlying platform, and then your actual infrastructure then, it sounds like, doesn't have to be too crazy. Like it's not like you're running, this massive database with, some crazy scale where you're actually handling like the retail processing. You're, farming out most of that, which puts you in a really nice position. It's actually a kind of a nice position for I would say almost anybody building some kind of AI capability that's augmenting another solution, right? Because they get to rely on that back end compute. It's a pretty nice place to be.
Yeah, I think where we see it is like it's pretty wild that in the last year or two, how many like large language models like have come out and that are capable. I'm not talking, dodgy, I built one for 6 million that thinks it's ChatGPT. I'm actually talking about legitimate ones, and there's a lot of them. So I don't like, we see it like large language models, I think, are like the new cloud infrastructure. And what we want to do is just build like application layers. So like if you think about it, Netflix is just application layer on cloud. So is booking.com. So is Airbnb, so is Shopify. They're not building like fundamental core like technology and IP. So we see the same. So the idea is to build heavily on the application layer. Now, having said that, our databases are huge. They're about 30 times bigger than what they were because they're like vectors, vectorized, or components of it are vectorized. So we had to build our own search. So I think part of it is we use Gen AI for a lot of logic. We use Gen AI for a lot of transposing. But for example, we still use like hybrid search. So that's like not Gen AI. That's a different thing. We have to convert to vectors, which isn't Gen AI. And we also need the other things like redundancies and all this stuff. So there are components of, say, not Gen AI, but I think when it comes to a lot of the logic and a lot of the like customer facing application side, it's all Gen AI.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't think about those other pieces. And then
Yeah.
I was kind of curious because you mentioned like the engineers sort of getting up to speed and building these POCs. So have they been heavily using Gen AI then for their development? Like, are they using like, GitHub Copilot or something similar to help develop that?
They use it a bit. They don't actually use it as much as I would like, but I think part of it is I think the dev tools are still like they're there, but they're not like as good and as functional as we would like.
Mhm.
Um, so most of it comes into when it's like I need to convert this, or I need a prompt for this, or it could just be something simple like, hey, I need some logic to go down this path to make a
Mhm.
decision. Like, hey, in code it might be um, a 3-week job, but hey, I can write a prompt that will do this in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's different. But having said that, code is still better in other sections. Like, for
Mhm.
example, there was one where it was when the AI returns more than one or more products, respond like this. So
Mhm.
basically, if it returns 0, respond like this. If it returns 1 or more, respond like this. And the AI just was not like even believe like it's simple, but it just wasn't getting it. So
Yeah.
we're like, hey, like just put this in code. It's easier. So like it's not Gen AI for everything, but it is for
Right.
like 95%, to be honest.
Actually, that's a really good point. Like the human element is sort of wrangling these different things, right? So you're creating Gen AI prompts, you're utilizing Gen AI to create code, but then you need the human here to be making a decision like, wait a second, what tool should we actually be using to solve this particular
Yeah.
problem? And then sort
Mm.
of making all of those things work
Yeah.
together. So the human really becomes the orchestrator and becomes the person that can come in and sort of solve problems and resolve challenges, which is good. I'm glad us engineers still have lots of work to do, and it's
Yeah.
just
I,
more
I
important than ever before.
Yeah. I see like supervisor. Like for
Yeah.
example, we try to always take the approach of AI first. So hey, we've got a problem, let's solve it. Cool. What
Mhm.
can we do with AI? Because what it means is it automatically gets better as models get better. It's like
Mhm.
right now, if I build something in code that is fixed and is never getting better. But if I build logic through AI and it works well with, say, our 4.0 mini,
Mhm.
which is like an inferior model to 4.0, let's go one day they make 4.0 the same cost of 4.0 mini or very close to. We upgrade, our whole software is like 50% better. Or they
Right.
do 5.0 mini and it's 5 times better. Our whole software is 5 times better. So you always want to start there, but you do need that supervisor to just go, hey, it's just, is it greater than 1 or is it less than 1? Like,
Mhm.
guys, just building code. It's cheaper, and it
Yeah.
also means it's faster because it's very slow. Like when you've got, say, 4 prompts, or so like some of our cores have like 10 prompts. So then when you have all these, they can run concurrently, but some of them can't. So all of a
Right.
sudden, if you've got 4 prompts in a row that needs the output of the previous prompt, then like something that, say, traditionally would take you, say, 500 milliseconds will literally take us like 10 seconds.
Well, yeah, because it's
But
call, wait,
have
call,
to,
wait, call,
have to.
wait. Yep. Yep.
So there
Exactly.
are those elements too. So there's lots to consider.
Yeah. Cool. Are you available in the Azure Marketplace, or is that something that's planned?
Planned.
Planned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Um, I don't know what else. What else? Where else did you want to take the conversation? Like this is pretty cool. Like I've learned a lot from this. Anything else that you were dying to talk about here?
I mean, I think something that we could cover is like the mentality to move away from what is known into unknown. And I think even from this is just from a non-technical Quoc and I founder standpoint. I think this is what's happening with a lot of businesses, and I think small businesses can win because we have less to lose. So, example, if you're a search provider and you have 100 million rev, little old Preezie has built a search that might be a bit more expensive, but is like 10 times better than your search, and it's much faster to onboard. So I think, and I'll go and I'll hand it over to Quoc. But I think from our standpoint, I think it's going to be hard, but I think it's going to be like a necessary evil, that businesses just come to the realization that you are going to have to bastardize your own revenue and existing models if you want to win, because some small little business, and I'm actually writing a chapter in a book about this too, which is cool, where a small little business of 10 people is going to outperform you because they just don't have $100 million of revenue to lose.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, we've seen this again and again too. We in the Innovator's Dilemma book, right, is about this very thing too. Sorry, go ahead, Quoc.
No. Look, I concur with Michael. I mean, we've always been at the forefront of innovation in terms of our business, and we're always looking at, how can we adapt our business and our product to what is coming. And it's, you read history books and you see the blockbusters and Netflix's overtaking because it's just basically the right technology at the right time. We've got that mentality, and we know other business and founders that are just hesitant of that reluctance. I mean, part of it is they don't know where to start with AI. I get it. That's can be a rabbit warren, but the other part is this. We've got an existing product. We're generating this amount of revenue. We don't want that to. But there are ways where you can, morph and take your way, sort of build that trajectory. So it's just having that right mindset is key.
I think one of the best ways to look at this is imagine you have a provider. Example, we'll take search because that's going to be one of the biggest hit.
Yeah.
And you're a search provider. You do 100 million rev, and then someone in your team who's innovative goes, "Hey, give me 6 months." You go, "Cool. Hey, I built this search engine that does everything our current search does, but it takes 1 week to onboard instead of 12 weeks because we transpose all the data. Yeah, okay, it's a little bit slower, but it's the same price, or if not cheaper, or maybe even a little bit more, but it's 5 times better."
Yeah.
Now you're a search provider. If it's the same price, then it's okay. But then you go, wait a minute, the margin's not 90%. It's not a SaaS margin; it's 20%. So either way, what do you do? And it will be hard. It'll be super hard. So I get it. Even for us, in the future, our AI shopping assistant would probably make quizzes redundant. Maybe not for enterprise, but for mid markets. So you just got to kind of come to just have a chat and figure this out, because it's going to happen. So either you do it internally, or someone else is going to do it, or if you're big enough, you just buy them.
Yeah. Yeah, Gen AI kind of brings up this question of, are we even trying to solve the right problem? Because it used to be that to solve the real problem was way too difficult. So we all avoided it. We're like, well, computers are bad at this, right? So we're gonna make some kind of basic search. We're just gonna look for words or whatever. We're gonna avoid the problem completely, and we're gonna solve a different problem that we just think is easier. Now with Gen AI, we can finally say, okay, what is the thing that we're actually trying to do? What information are we trying to get to? What is the thing that we're actually trying to do? Why don't we actually solve the real problem this time? And I think that's part of why too. It's so much more valuable. It's so much faster because all the things that used to be hard in computer science are the easy things now. We flipped everything around. So it's just, what an exciting world. So much excitement in front of us.
It will take a thought logic change, because people won't even see it as a problem. So for example, if you say to most people, does search have a problem? Well, if you go, and I've seen the data because I work with all the retailers, if you go to all the retailers and look at the top 100 search terms, it's single search terms, pants, TVs, because like humanity has been trained, that's what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, no one goes to
We're the
Best Buy.
computers now.
No one goes to Best Buy and just goes TVs. They have some idea. TV with this budget, this application.
Yeah.
So then what happens is some forward-thinking leaders will go, search is broken because it can't do step 2, but some people won't. So all of a sudden, what will happen is in our AI, you can say, hey, I'm looking for a summer dress between 100 and 150 with long sleeves with patterns on it. Like you can actually make that search if you wanted to. So it's going to take some time, and also consumers need time. Like for example, we did a research on the 4 mindsets of shoppers, and it's basically split as quarters, but 25% are early adopters, 25% basically just need an excuse thing, younger ones, 25% are open but cautious, like they're keen and they don't hate AI, but they're open. 25% are like cynical, so basically open and curious, but more towards the I don't like this, and then 25% just like hate it. It's Skynet. I like they're the ones that are trolling you on the internet for building AI. So it's going to take time for things to just happen and for mindsets to shift.
Yeah.
I think that in terms of where we sit, we're at the infancy in terms of this sort of AI for shopping. I mean, we want to be the leaders. We've got a product that is quite innovative. But as Michael alluded, like there is power in what we're building, but the consumers themselves don't necessarily know that they can use it in this way. So we're still going through this issue of educating and working retailers to be able to educate their consumers to go, you know what, you can actually, this is quite powerful in the way that you can, look for search or recommendations or these sorts of things, because we're still getting people, putting in very basic terms in terms of recommending things where, as Michael alluded, it can go through to the extent of, a beach wedding or I've got a sophisticated event coming up, et cetera, et cetera. Like we've built it that powerfully, but the consumers need to catch up on, or at least be educated anyway, to know that they can use our product and tool in that way.
Yeah, I'm one of them. I mean, I go to the site, I'm going to say, that's terrible, I'm not going to use it, which is super ironic given what I know about the technology. So once I know and I get those signals that the technology is good, then I'll be all over it. So I'm one of those people that needs to be retrained for sure.
That's okay, because even like my sister is like a buyer of the retailer that we did our first pilot on. And she told me, she said, hey, when I first used this, like it felt really different, almost like uncomfortable. But she goes, like, I've done it now 3 or 4 times. And she goes, I find it like totally, like, I don't know if it's good or bad, but like I find it like totally like different and almost addictive. And like it just opens up curiosity, because she'll say, like, she'll start doing terms like find a dress for date night in red or something. And like it'll go off and it'll find it. So she basically said like it allowed her to feel like more herself when she was shopping, but she didn't feel like that straight away. It took her time to get familiar. She said 3 or 4 times, and then once she did it, she was like, I actually like prefer this a lot more than like the normal way to shop.
What a good example. Yeah, cool. Such a good example. Yeah, because otherwise, I'm gonna go to the site. I'm not searching for that dress, but if I was, right, like I'm just like, okay, how did they classify it? Is that a shirt? Is that something else? Like, oh, there's a dresses section. Okay, like it's just terrible. Like the experience, when you really think about how it actually works today, it's kind of terrible. And being able to do it in that way and just say like, look, this is what I'm looking for. Here's the information. Because if you had a personal shopper, if you had somebody that you were paying a whole bunch of money to be a personal shopper, that's how you would talk to them. Like, this is what I'm looking for. And they would just take care of it. So there's such a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Definitely.
Amazing. Cool. Well, with that, I think we can end the conversation there. I think that should inspire lots of people that are listening, and I'm sure people who heard this too are getting excited about the technology. So I really appreciate you two coming on here and talking about Preezie and the technology behind it.
No, thanks, Jason. I really appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.